Hello, welcome everybody to the fortnightly Backdrop community meeting. Uh, we get together every 2 weeks to do this. My name is Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager, other kinds of managers in San Ramon, California, and I can be found on various internets as Cell Ear. Um, and I will toss it to how about Jen?
Sure. My name is Tim Erickson. I am St. Paul Tim on the internet. I am in Deerwood, Minnesota, where after all the snow was gone and it warmed up, we got hit by a blizzard the last few days, but it's now clearing up. Just came back from mid camp, by the way. Had a great mid camp. Did a session on the differences between the layout system and Backdrop and Drupal, modern Drupal. It's recorded, available on the Midcamp channel, and we'll talk about it at Backdrop Live next week. Martin, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Martin Price, Yorkshire Pudding on the Internet, a backdrop developer in North East England, United Kingdom.
Justin? Or Jen, why don't we go with Justin? You go last because you're.
Jen Lambton joining from Oakland, California. I'm super excited to watch this presentation because I have a handful of customers that are getting hacked on WordPress very frequently, and none of their backdrop sites are getting hacked. So I'm trying to figure out how easy it is to move them over. So thank you, Justin.
Irina, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Irina Zaks. I'm working today from California, Mountain View. I'm very excited to see this presentation, and I'm sure it should be really, really good to migrate from ways to migrate from WordPress to Backdrop.
Hey, Justin, go ahead. Just introduce yourself and jump right in.
Hey, I'm Justin Kaiser. I am a web developer normally in Muncie, Indiana, but I am in my hometown of MacArthur, Ohio today. I'm sitting in the park in the shelter house where I had my first Boy Scout meeting a very long time ago. I've done this backdrop to WordPress thing a few times. So when the topic came up, I volunteered to talk about it. So we shall see if this works. So WordPress to Backdrop migrations. I'm not going to go full screen with the slideshow here because I want to know where all my windows are or my tabs. So why would you do this sort of thing? So WordPress has some limitations when you're trying to do complicated things. The plugins and themes cost money, which is not very nice. And it is the most popular platform CMS on the web. So if somebody is trying to hack websites or give websites malware, it's the most prevalent target out there. I know we probably all look at our Backdrop and Drupal sites and we see in the log people trying to hit WP admin and log in. And we don't have that same target in Backdrop because it's a much smaller project. So Backdrop gives you greater complexity with content types, fields, and views out of the box. You get Drupal, but it's simpler to run the Backdrop site. And the plugins, I put plugins and not modules. Modules and themes are free. So the process of the migration that I've done is to use the export out of WordPress that gives you the XML file. And I've either imported that file into Backdrop or Drupal using modules. In Backdrop, it's the WordPress import module, and in Drupal, it is primarily the WordPress migrate module. So that's what these are here. The WordPress migrate, I probably had better experiences with it, but it's not ported yet because we haven't exactly ported and released the migrate module that it relies on. At some point, I may take another try at getting those two things to work in Backdrop. But I think I'm improving the WordPress import module to the point where it works better and can be the solution for it. Because last week, after I started messing around with this, I got myself into being a maintainer of the WordPress import module. So I've done this a couple times with each module, going to Drupal and going to Backdrop. And there was a site with the site I worked on at the library. This could come up with websites too. Some organizations have more than one website. So there was a website that the IT department had and put content on, but then the marketing department came along and wanted something easier to work with. So they made this WordPress site. So we got this blog and the website. Now we got two things. We want to make them one thing. So we had a Drupal 7 site and we had a WordPress blog. So I tinkered around with it and found out about the WordPress migrate module, and I imported the blog content into the site. I actually did this on the live site with no safety net. Don't do that. It works, but don't do that. And actually that Drupal 7 site became a Backdrop site. So it was still a WordPress to Backdrop migration. It just went through Drupal first. So at my current job, the first site I did this with was the Model Aircraft site. So I turned it into a Backdrop site with more content types that we can do more stuff with, and made it a Bootstrap 5 theme that I then used other places. So my experience with this site was that I didn't quite get the files imported correctly. They went to a really weird place in the files directory, and I believe that that old content, the links to the images are not what they should be. But I just went with it because I imported the content and it worked, and I decided to do the new stuff the right way and keep the old stuff just hanging out there, because there was about 10 years of content in there and I didn't want to go back and mess with it. And then we got the foundation website, which I did second. And I figured out a better way to do that, because I used the WordPress import module to import the content and the files came with it. But then one of the problems in the past with the WordPress import module was it imported the files into your site directory, but it didn't make them managed files. So you couldn't reuse them, and the site didn't know about them. But it did go through all of the content and change the links so they didn't point at the old WordPress site. So with that site, I had a two-step process. So I used the WordPress import, I got the files inside the site, but then I also used like the bulk media upload module to re-import the files so they would become managed files. And then magically, I think I tinkered with no, they were all pointing in the right place anyway. So I moved stuff around and made it work. And then I wrote an article last summer for Drupal Camp Asheville that's on their website about that process. And there was a decoupled part to it. I used the headless module in Backdrop to make a decoupled React block inside the site that I then turned into a React app, and it was cool. So that I got better with that one. And then lastly, I did one. Now it's not Backdrop, but I learned from it the next time I do a Backdrop to WordPress, because this was a Drupal 7 site that I moved to Drupal 10. And then there was also a WordPress blog that I moved into the same site. And the content was a mess. It had a bunch of inline styling over the years. And I ended up creating a bunch of like custom modules to go in and clean up the old content. They're Drupal modules right now, but they could easily become backdrop modules. There was also one that when you import the WordPress site into a Drupal or backdrop site, if the featured image wasn't set on the blogs, it doesn't go into the image field. So there was a module that I went over all of the content and grabbed the first image in the body field and put it in the image field. So then all of the teasers would look better. And I took a stab at making that backdrop last week, but then I didn't have enough time to finish it. But it could be, I think it could be done. So that's kind of my introduction to the sites that I've played with doing this. And now we're going to try to see if it works. All right, so we're going to go to WordPress and grab the download because folks may not know how to get there. I should have logged in. This is a multi-site, so I've still got several WordPress sites in here that I want to move to either Drupal or Backdrop. We're gonna try to use, I gotta move this. All right, well, where'd it go? This one. This is actually an old blog that we haven't added anything to for a couple years. So it won't go anywhere. But if we go to tools in the WordPress dashboard, we get an export. So you export that with all of the content, you download an export file. And you get an XML file. And that's what we're going to use. Don't need the WordPress anymore.
Would there be reasons to choose one of the other file formats?
There are other file formats.
Aren't there? I thought in the export there's different ways you can export it because that's it maybe.
I know I've got to get into the.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you. I hope to God there's something there.
No, it's all right. No, I don't think there's a choice.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
There
about
might
that.
be if you have other plugins. You might be able to export it different ways.
Let me ask the question while you're here. Is this core WordPress or a plugin?
This is core.
Okay.
Now, you may not have all of those choices if you're going to a WordPress site to export this file.
Yeah.
The accessibility stats and the quizzes and the polls, the custom forms are from plugins. And there's another aspect of this that now that we're back in here that could be useful if you have to manipulate the files in any way. So in the media library, I have a plugin installed that will, this is not core. It'll export the whole media library for this site in the multi-site. So you can do it as a single folder with all of the files, or the nested folders like WordPress saves them, like the date, the year, the month, the inside the folders. I think I've only done this with the single folder before, but it can help later if your file import messes up, or if you lose things along the process, you can come back here to the original site and get everything and then replace the files in your backdrop site. Or if you end up using the bulk upload module, you can get those files to bulk upload from this export. So now we're going to go back to backdrop. This should be just a normal backdrop site that I have probably installed a bunch of stuff in, but the database is empty. I've downloaded the WordPress import module, the latest release of it, and turned it on. So when you turn it on, you get a menu item under content. And the first time you do this, which site am I on? Oh, I'm on master. Okay. The first time you do this, the file that is not here because you haven't uploaded anything. So you can give your import a name, which is important if you use the rollback feature. I'm going to use the file that I've already uploaded into the site because it's already there and I don't want to duplicate it. So it tells me that this is I've only done this with kind of small sites. If you've got a complicated WordPress site, this may not work. We'll see. So it tells me I've got 245 posts, 81 comments, 7 authors, 428 categories, and 53 tags. I've already done this on this site, so we're just going to see how it doesn't work right now. And then I'm going to go to the other branch with the new site, and I'm going to fix it. So my posts, I want to put in the post content type, and I want to make them CK editor 5. And my pages, I'm going to put in the page content type, make them CK editor 5. I'm going to make the comments CK editor 5. I don't want to make menu items. I don't want to create a menu. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to do a single user and not replicate the users that are in WordPress. For now, I'm going to keep this the same. I don't know if create path aliases and create URL redirect actually work or not. But I'm going to say I'm going to transfer the images and I'm going to import my categories and tags and I'm going to import the comments. So the next screen, we're going to import the categories into the category taxonomy and the tags into the tags taxonomy. And for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to use my admin user as the user I'm going to import all the content as being the author of. I finish it and it should work, but it doesn't. It gives the reason it's not working is because with this site, there's something wrong with one of the comments on the blog posts and it gets stuck on it. So if I tell it to not import my comments, I'm going to get further. and it did nothing. When I tested it earlier today, it kind of worked better than that. But regardless, we're gonna do this on a site that I've done nothing to. The only thing I've done here is added the new version or my tweaked version of WordPress import that is in my own GitHub at the moment that I haven't pushed to Backdrop Contrib to release, or because I'm not sure what I want to do with it. As do I want to keep improving it, or do I just want to push it out as it is? So blank site. The first thing you need to do when you're trying to do this is create the taxonomy for the WordPress categories, because Backdrop only comes with tags. So now we got a category content or taxonomy, and I need to add that to the posts. So I need to add category, make it a term reference, autocomplete. Category vocabulary. So that's done. I've got only the default content that came with the Backdrop site. I'm going to try this again. And hopefully it's going to work. Same information. Posts. Filtered HTML. Page. Filtered. Single user. Transfer images. Put the categories in the category. Tags and tags.
Seems a shame it doesn't remember the parameters that you used moments ago.
Well, this is a different site, but the WordPress migrate module remembers your configuration. That is something that I want to try to fix. So I've imported 49 nodes, 0 users, 24 taxonomy terms, and 77 images. Now, why I only got 49 nodes right now, I don't know. But I got all my images and I got all the taxonomy terms. And if I go to managed files, I got managed files because they changed the module. And I mean, I have some content, but it kind of looks bad. And this particular WordPress site, they had wrapped all of the images in links, which I would have to clean up. And I'm currently debating with myself whether I would want the module to automatically do that, because not every WordPress site is like that, or if it's something custom that I want to do after this. Because if you mouse over the image, the link is, well, to a different website. But the actual image, that's not a good site because there's a bunch of links in there. That's not a good post to look at. Let's look at this one. So I mouse over it and it's got the link down at the bottom is still going to the old site, which isn't great. So I want to get rid of, I'm going to have to get rid of that link if I wanted to make this site live. But if you look at the code in here, it's got files /WP images / the image file. So it actually did import all of the files into my files directory and make them managed files. And it changed all the links inside the post. So that's a good thing. So, questions about this process, how we could improve it?
I'd love to see incremental failure if we could. You know, you had
Incremental
to restart the
failure.
process. Yeah, you had to restart the process when you saw when it like ran to a mistake. Ideally, I love it as it's churning through. If it came to like your bad comment, to give you an option to be like, okay, screw that comment, keep going.
Well, I did change the code, so it skipped over that. It did it automatically. Like it didn't get stuck on that comment that was screwed up anymore. It just went past
Mhm.
it. Which is improvement over it stopping.
Yes.
But I'm curious why it only imported 49 nodes. I seem to recall when I did this before, I had more than 49 nodes.
Is there a command line way to run it?
No, but there could be. That's a good option too.
I'm just used to command line things being more verbose. So if you're doing it by like B or drush, it would give you little status lines for each successful import.
Yeah, the number of options could be quite complex if you've got quite a lot of different types. Because if you're having to do all those settings in switches, that could get quite complex. And I think the UI probably has the edge over the command line for configuring it.
I should have had more than 49 nodes, but let's try one of the other sites just for the fun of it. I'm gonna, because I downloaded 3 WordPress sites last week when I was starting to mess with this at mid-camp. It's not gonna let me delete that. You know what? Let's stop working in the cloud right now.
Mhm.
Delete that. There we go. I got smart when I was testing this and I exported my database at right before I did the import, so I didn't have to go through all the steps anymore. Let's try it again. Let's try Ooh. This one. See, this site doesn't have anything in it. But why did it say there were more nodes at the beginning? It's just strange. Because it imported more than 9 nodes. Oh, these are. Maybe those are from a different site. Anyway, work in progress. Let's use the other database. Now it's empty. It really should remember this. So you don't have to go through all this every stinking time.
Is there any advantage to putting the images into a subfolder called WP images? Is that just is that necessary to maintain paths, or is it?
It's
Could,
probably,
could you move away from sort of WP directories if you wanted to?
you could. I think that it will still work if you just did this. If you went. If you change this to just not do a subdirectory, but it may help keep them separate from.
Yeah, but whether you, I was just wondering about whether, because I think obviously WP images reflects what's in the WordPress site, so whether you could just change it to say images or
Yeah,
images import and not have an obvious link back to the WordPress.
you definitely could. My experience with this has been that it's been relatively easy to get the content in to Backdrop or Drupal, but making it look good afterwards is the challenging part. So that time I took away the WP images. And where did they go? Oh. When I did that, it created a files directory, another files directory. So it's files now. Yep. Files/files. So I'm kind of out of WordPress sites that I desperately need to do this with. I was just tinkering with it. So if anybody does have actual WordPress sites to move and running into issues, we could work on this module.
A few questions.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, going back, I was a bit distracted. Did you create the like content types in advance, or did the module set them up for you?
The content types are just what comes with Backdrop. You're going to put your posts and posts and pages and pages.
Okay,
But if you did have a WordPress site that had custom content types, you would have to create those content types in the Backdrop site to map them.
and that was sort of my next question. Well, one of my next questions was that it looks like you're doing pretty simple WordPress sites.
I don't have any
Yeah.
complex ones.
Right. Do you anticipate that getting exponentially harder if the site is a little more complex? I mean, does this only work if you think because the site is so simple, or does it scale a bit, at least a little bit? Like, for example, if you did custom, yeah, what do they call them in WordPress? But
Advanced custom fields.
right. With this process, you think it would work if you just recreated the equivalents ahead of time? Or you don't know?
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, you can use the example of the categories. Like that category field does not exist in Backdrop automatically. So
Right.
you've got to create that taxonomy and then create the field. Otherwise, it won't import. So the module itself may not be built to work with the advanced custom fields.
Sure.
In that case, you
mhm.
might be able to do it better with just feeds.
Well, that was one of my other questions. Was just the advantage or disadvantage of just using feeds for this. So we looked at the export only came as a, what did you say, was it an XML file? The data was all dumped into?
I believe so.
Okay, can you would feeds recognize that file?
I think it would.
Has anybody tried something like that before? Just using feeds on like a WordPress XML export or an XML export from anywhere? No?
Tried XML.
Yeah, I've only used. What is the? If you do a feeds export by default, oh, it's just like a CSV file. Okay, that's what I've done. Okay. I feel like there are alternatives though for importing.
Yeah, I've done JSON with feeds. That requires a plugin, but works
Well,
well.
that would be an interesting experiment. Are there any other modules that might help with a WordPress migration? Like just more generic, not specific to WordPress, but just like migration modules or. I'm just Googling like migrate in the modules list. Um, yeah, that looks like the main one other than feeds. Did you use,
Have you had any?
go ahead.
I was going to talk to a different topic, so throw yours in first.
Well, I was looking through modules and I ran across the pack and upload. Is that, you mentioned something about using another module for uploading images,
It was a bulk upload.
bulk upload, okay.
Yeah, this is the foundation site that I did have success with importing the content with this WordPress import module. So I've done backdrop things to it since then that weren't possible in WordPress. But if you look at the posts, everything like before, I don't know, May
Mhm,
of last year came from the import.
mhm.
So I got a lot. I mean, I got probably 8 of the pages of content in here were posts from WordPress.
Okay.
And when I uploaded those, like I had a document content type and an images content type when I used the bulk uploader to make them managed files,
Mhm.
because I didn't get the managed files with the state of the module back then.
Sure.
So it did work for a real site. It was still a simple site, but it did work.
Okay. Okay, well, we're starting to run out of time. Does anybody else have any other questions? No, Luke is still here. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
was going to ask you if you've wrestled with the fields in WordPress. If you, all right,
Nope.
because there's various ways to get fields in WordPress, and I'm not super familiar with them, but that was I'd be curious to see if you haven't, then you don't
It
know.
would be an interesting experiment to see what happens with advanced custom fields.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like mapping them to backdrop fields would be an obvious desirable thing to have.
Okay. Well, if we've got nothing else, we could go ahead and wrap up this meeting. It's only about 5 or 6 minutes till the next meeting. We should remind everybody, Backdrop Live is next week. Justin, feel free to add, since you put all the work in preparing for this, if you want to do something follow up at Backdrop Live, or maybe you already have, I don't know. But that would be totally legit. There might be some other people that show up with some other thoughts at Backdrop Live.
Yeah, now I found out everything that doesn't work, so I can work on it next week.
Sure. And you could either do the presentation again, or you could just start from where we left off and say, here's what I learned last week, or what I've learned since, and move forward. So.
But the state of the sites in my multi-site, there still could be 1 or 2 that are usable that go to Backdrop, but a couple of them are probably going into our big Drupal site. I want to I want to get away from that third content management system and
Sure.
not have the plugins that we're paying for and,
Right.
you know, dealing with WordPress too. So I want to
Right.
get all of those sites that we're still using out of it into something.
Okay. I have yet to have the opportunity to convert a WordPress site to Backdrop, but I look forward to that one. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and end the meeting or the recording. Bye, everybody. See you in a few minutes.